Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J and I am here with Shah Barrett.
Hi.
Cheryl Phipps.
Hi there.
And Wendy Vella.
Hello.
Hello. And this week we have an awesome guest. I'm so excited. We've got Kaye Kennedy.
Yay.
Welcome, Kaye.
Hi. Thank you for
Hi.
having me.
So Kaye did this amazing post on 20 Books a wee while ago. I'm not sure of the exact date. Maybe you'll have to tell us. On how she made it to 1 million page reads in 6 months. And so we're going to talk a little bit about your process and what you did and how you got there. But first, Cheryl, the delightful Cheryl, is going to do your bio.
All right. So Kaye Kennedy is a CEO by day and a contemporary romance author by night. In her novels, you can always expect a happily ever after that kisses and tells. She's had a love affair with reading and writing for as far back as she can remember, which led her to earning her degrees in English literature. Kaye taught college composition and literature classes before switching gears entirely and became an entrepreneur, starting multiple businesses. Originally from New York, Kaye now lives on the Florida coast with her husband, who often inspires her characters. She's a sucker for an alpha with a soft side. When she isn't busy writing or running one of her companies, Kaye spends as much time as she can cuddling with her rescue mutt Zeus, paddling on the water or relaxing on the beach with a good book.
Nice.
Thank you.
You sound awesome, Kaye.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
And you know
I
what?
apologize for my dog, who is of course, the second we start, deciding he wants to bark.
course.
Hasn't barked
Yeah.
all day, but the second
Yeah.
we start,
Yes.
so I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah.
all right. We have
Right.
dogs barking, birds chirping, cats yowling.
You'll probably
It's
hear
just-
them.
Yeah, that I wouldn't worry.
It's life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's live.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's get right into the interview
Okay.
and start out. So you have a little bit of a process of how you got into writing. So can you just talk about your journey, your writer's journey of how you got into writing, publishing, and particularly
Absolutely.
self-publishing? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I always knew I was going to be an author from the time I was little. I'm an only child, so reading and writing has always been a solace for me because the characters in books were my friends and I had to use my imagination a lot. So I came up with stories. So it was something I knew I was always going to do. And then when I was a teenager, I started to buy there's like the guidebooks. I'm sure they still have them, but the guidebooks that has all the publishers and the agents in it. And so I'd buy it every year and I'd take my notes and highlight of all the ones that I wanted to reach out to. I had no book at this point, mind you, but I just had to, I had to get the research in. So I started doing that. And then when I went to college, I have my degrees in English literature. So there was no time for any extracurricular stuff like that because I was reading 300 to 400 pages a night, plus writing my papers on top of it and working on top of that. So I kind of pushed it to the side for a while. And I did take some creative writing classes while I was in college as well. So I did still get to feed that creativity a little bit. But really, in terms of publishing, I kind of put that to the wayside. I did want to get my master's in fine arts, my MFA in creative writing. That was a plan of mine. But all of the programs I wanted to go to were outside of New York, which is where I was living at the time. And that wasn't an option for me to leave at that point where I was in my life. So I went on with life and I started teaching. I taught college composition and I was an advisor as well at the university. And then back in 2016, life threw my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, and I a curveball, and we ended up moving to Florida very unexpectedly. And I took that as an opportunity because at that point I had wanted to start this business that I just kept pushing aside because I was making good money doing what I was doing. And I never had that opportunity to really start it. And I needed that kick in the butt, So that was my kick in the butt. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to start my business. And so I did. And it took off. And then that spawned another business. And I just started really throwing myself into that and becoming an entrepreneur. And then in 2017, I was at an event and somebody stopped by my booth and he's an author. And so he started talking to me. I'm like, I've always wanted to be an author. Tell me everything you know, I've got you here. I'm going to ask you everything. And he told me about this little group called 20 Books to 50K on Facebook. And so I looked it up and I joined, and it opened my eyes to the world of self-publishing because at that point, all I knew was traditional publishing. I'd heard of indie publishing, but I will admit I was not as informed as I should have been, and I didn't view it as like really being published unless you were traditionally published. Now, of course, I've completely changed that perspective because I'm informed and I've educated myself. But it really opened my eyes to this new opportunity. Now I didn't have to scour looking for an agent and then finding an editor and then dealing with being on the bottom of that pile, you know, and getting in front of the right person and waiting years to have your book baby come to life, you know. So I started to learn more about it. And the more that I learned, I realized I think I can do this, because at that point I had several businesses. I think I've owned 7 businesses in my life in the last decade. So I'd done this a few times. I failed at a few, which I've learned a lot from. And so I from everything that I'd learned, I really thought that this was something that I could have success with by self-publishing. So I spent several years researching, really deep dive researching into everything self-publishing. And then also craft too. I did some craft research as well for writing at the same time. And then I started another business. And so I had 3 going at once. And something just told me, you know, I've been studying for so long, and this is something I've really wanted to do. And it was my 31st birthday was coming up. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to finally do it. And I'm going to write this book, and I'm not going to make any more excuses, and I'm just going to do it. And so I started writing, and this was October of 2019. I started writing what's now my debut novel, Burning for More. And I picked the worst time possible to do that because, as you probably know, the holiday season is one of the busiest when you have a retail company like I do. And I also had a new business that would be opening in January of last year, 2020. So it was terrible, terrible timing on my part, but I started it. And that right there was the first step. And that was one of the most important things that I needed to do for myself, because I am admittedly a perfectionist. And I had never at that point finished a full-length novel. I'd written short stories, but I never finished a full-length novel because every time I wrote, I edited as I went. And not just that, when I'd put it down and come back to it, I would reread what I had already written and I would re-edit. And so it would just take forever and I would never ever finish. So I had read this advice in 20 books where somebody had said, just get the words down. And I really took that to heart. And I told myself, I made a promise to myself that I was just going to write. I would not edit. I wouldn't let myself edit. So I started October of 2019, and then I finished it in January of 2020, taking breaks along the way. I think it took me about 16 days to actually write it, because lo and behold, once I got out of my own way, the words just came, you know? So that's really how I started getting into self-publishing in that regard. And then once I finished it in January of 2020, I took a few months, I put it away, went back to it, and then started doing my edits. And in the meantime, I was doing more research. I signed up for Mark Dawson's SPF 101 course. So I did that. I'd done a writing conference. So I was really trying to immerse myself in everything. But my plan originally was not to publish until this year, so until 2021. That changed with last year in the pandemic, because as a business owner and an entrepreneur, all 3 of my businesses virtually shut down for several months. So I took a 6-figure hit last year, and I needed to make up that income. I needed to do something. Plus now I had all this extra time on my hands. Yes, I was still running my business, but it wasn't consuming as much time as it usually did. So I was like, all right, we're going to just get it done. We're going to make it happen this year. And I cranked out the second book. It took me about 3 weeks to write that, got those off to the editor, and I finally hit publish on my first one in the beginning of August. I think it was August 5th of 2020 was when I finally published my first book. So long answer to how I got started, but that's it.
No, it's a good answer.
It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you really like the research is one thing I got from that. So you're someone who likes to know what you're doing and then plan and get it done. But you're also someone who gets it done. So you wrote those books and once you got out of your own way. I love that. That's awesome. And so you published those first 3 books really quickly in the end, like the release dates were quite close together. Do you want us to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I decided that I knew I had to write series. I write contemporary romance. So I knew I had to write series for smart marketing. That was the best way to go, especially being a no-name author just starting out. And I wanted to rapid release because I didn't want to run ads until I had a few books out there. So I wanted to rapid release so I could maximize on that, which was also why I didn't want to publish until 2021, because I wanted to have, my original goal was to have 5 books edited, ready to go when I hit publish. That didn't happen. I had 2, but I've been making it work. So yes, I did publish. My first book came out on August 5th. The second one came out August 18th. In retrospect, I probably would have pushed that a little bit further out. I wanted to keep the momentum going, which is why I published them so close together, because I'm like, well, if people are going to take a shot on me as a new author right off the bat, I want to get them right away, you know, and then get them to go into that second one, and then hopefully they're hooked, you know. So I probably would have pushed it out to maybe a month, just because for my purposes, that was very overwhelming for me going through my first release ever, and then having to do another one right after that, back to back. And then also it would have given me more cushion time to do more writing if I had pushed that release a little further. But I did it, and it went successfully, so I can't complain.
What did you do to the sorry, with those releases before we go to the third one? How did you release them?
So the first book, so I had started my social media pages, my website, all of that, as soon as I finished writing my first manuscript. So that was the beginning of this past year, 2020. And I knew that I knew how valuable Facebook groups could be, because I don't have a Facebook group for my other businesses, but I do use Facebook Live and my Facebook pages, and I know the value of social media for sales. So I knew that was something that I needed to focus a lot of attention on. And in order to do that, my Facebook group is called Romance Reads That Kiss and Tell with Kaye Kennedy, because for search optimization, anybody that's looking for something that they want to, if they're reading romance and they're looking for those buzzwords, my group is going to come up. And it's also not specific necessarily to the author. I could pitch it to people that just like to read romance. And even to this day, we do our book of the month club. So we read other books. So it's not just about me. So that gave me an opportunity to start that and get that going before I was publishing and before my name was anything. So that was a big thing that I did. And I did book a blog tour as well, one of the paid blog tours, because at that point I only knew a few that I was following, but I didn't know the first thing about reaching out to them, like cold calling essentially. So I did go ahead and book a paid one for that. And then I also wanted to do a giveaway. So I set up a 5-book giveaway. It was ebooks, and it was my first book. And then I picked 4 other books by other authors, and I themed it to my book. So my book was the first in series. So I picked 4 other books that were first in series books that I was going to buy out of my own pocket and then give away from other authors. And then reach out to those authors and ask them if they would promote my giveaway. So that's what I did. And when I was picking those books, I aimed high. I'm going to be honest. I aimed high with some of the authors that I picked, and I really didn't expect them to share. Lo and behold, all of them shared. So this was the 2 to 3 weeks before my book was coming out. And then one of them also let me go do a takeover in her Facebook group as well upon my release. So that was very helpful. Before my book even came out, I had, I want to say, close to 100 people that had joined my group just from that alone. And my newsletter, when my first book went out, my newsletter had, I want to say, like 800 people. So wow. I had garnered, so I got real lucky, I guess, or strategically, I guess I did that well. But
yes,
yeah, I don't think it's luck, Kaye. I think it's hard work.
You made that happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Maybe a little of both. So that was really the big thing that catapulted me for that first release. I did also utilize BookFunnel. So I'm in Kindle Unlimited, but before the book went out, I did put the first 100 pages on BookFunnel, and I got that into promotions. So in doing that, I was able to get people to start reading my book. And I was very clear about the fact that it was just a sample, because I hate that as a reader when you get into something and you think you're getting a book and then it's not. So it was very clear that it's just a sample, but I made sure I ended it on the part where they want to turn the next page, you know? So, so that did get me a lot of readers as well. So I did that. I also booked newsletter swaps because I was able to build up my newsletter to the size that I had. More authors were willing to take swaps with me. So that was really what I did for that first launch. I think I had about 25 pre-orders for that first book, which as an author, as a new author with no following, I would take. So
brilliant.
So that's that was what I did for the first one.
Wow.
Awesome. And did you make changes for the second one? Did you do something similar?
I did the giveaway again for the second one. I want to say I did the second giveaway. I did like scorching hot romance reads or something like that, and it was all firefighter books. And then same thing, I reached out to the authors, and I didn't have all of them share it, but I think 3 out of the 4 or 2 out of the 4, I don't remember, did share it. So that helped as well. And that's a strategy that I've kept up with all of my books, is doing that giveaway. And then
what do you do it through? Sorry, just quickly, what do you do the giveaway through?
So when those first few that I did off of my website, because I built that myself. So I have those capabilities to do that without having to reach out to a developer. But now I use King Sumo because it does give me a few more opportunities to utilize, which I highly recommend if you're doing giveaways and you're not using something like that, because it gives you extra entries. So it's not just for entering the giveaway, but you can put in other things that they can get extra points for. So I always put in, join my Facebook group, follow me on BookBub, follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok, whatever it is. So you're not just getting newsletter joins, but you're also getting those follows on social media as well. So that's something that I've changed since then. That's been very helpful.
Were you choosy with your newsletter swaps, or did you just
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. Yes, because from my research, I was obsessive about my also bots, because everyone always mentions these also bots. And I'm like, I have to make sure they're exactly who I want, you know? And so I was very picky I still am picky about who I do swap with. I will say, so my newsletter now goes out twice a week. I send out every Monday and Thursday. And that gives me, it's a lot, but I see spikes in sales and in social media follows every single time that I send one out. So at this point, I'm going to keep that up until I see it start not working for me. But that gives me 34 opportunities in a month to swap with a newsletter. So that's been, so that's huge, especially so next week I have a free book promo coming out. So I've stacked all of these promos for next week. So I've got 20 or 30 newsletter swaps that are just going to go out on my free promo day. And that's free advertising. So that has worked well. But in terms of what I accept for my newsletters, I write full-length contemporary. So if you're writing shorts, I'm not going to swap with you just because it's going to change the also bots, because I'm very protective of those. Also, I look for a minimum average review. It has to be, if you have a lot of reviews, it has to be a minimum of 4 stars. If you have a smaller amount of reviews, I look for 4.5 stars and above. And I always go through and I read the best reviews and I read the worst reviews. And if I see anything about grammar or misspellings or needs an editor, I'm not going to swap. Because I don't have the time to go and read all of these books before I swap, but there is definite value in it. And there are authors, it's one thing I've learned being an entrepreneur is collaboration is key. And it's the same thing. And honestly, I think I've learned that even more being an author is how valuable being able to collaborate is. So I want to be able to promote others just as much as I need that help myself, you know, remembering when I first started and I had nothing, and now I have 5,000 newsletter subscribers. So I know that's a big help for other authors too. So I am kind of picky.
Yeah. It's good that you're picky, Kay. Question about the books that you're giving away. Are they ebooks or are they print books, Kay?
They're ebooks.
They're ebooks. Okay.
Yeah, because that lets me keep it international, or not. Yeah, that lets me keep it international. I have done some paperback giveaways, and I will do if it's just mine. I might open it up to international, but it can cost me like $30 just in shipping.
No,
Yeah, you took it to the
We're in New Zealand, so yeah.
I know. So yeah, so I mean, I do like to keep some of those open for international, but it's only if I'm sending one of my books. I couldn't possibly send 5. So that costs me probably between $15 and $20 to do that giveaway, which for promo, for the amount of advertising I get from it, is like nothing. It's totally
Minimal.
worth it.
Yeah.
Do you have any pushback from any authors that didn't want to be part of the giveaway? Like, did you do it first and then
No, not at all. And because I'm buying their books too, you know, it's not like I'm asking them to donate their book, and I'm giving them promotion as it is. And if other authors share it, those other authors are giving them promo too. So it's really a win-win for everybody. And of course, I'm smart about what I pick too. You know, I make sure I pick books that are going to be related, so that it makes sense. It's not just a complete mishmash. So
yeah.
And is the price point relevant to you as well? You know, with the books that you're giving away, like similar to your price?
Yes, absolutely. So my first book is $9.99. My other books are $3.99. My Christmas book is $2.99. So the other books that I give away are in the same price point. But I don't even look so much at the price point necessarily as I do the content and what it is, and making sure it's because, like I said, everything is themed. So the book I released in January was Second Chance, Romance, Friends to Lovers. So I found similar books to match with that followed that same trope. And what also works with that theory that I've decided works with that theory is that you're going to have readers that are into that. Every reader has like those tropes they love, you know. So by grouping it that way, you're getting readers, you're getting more attention on it. So like I gave away a Lucy Score book at one point, and so you've got readers that are like, oh yeah, I love that trope. Oh, it's in this too, and it's in this too, and it's in this too. So it's helpful for them as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I actually think readers, or especially romance, read for trope more than genre, maybe. I don't know. Because I definitely have tropes that I love that I will read across the different genres in romance. Definitely.
That's true.
So I love the fact that you've used the ways that you've used your business experience there. So is there anything else that you've done that's come from your business background, your entrepreneurial background, that you've been able to use in your publishing?
Absolutely. Well, it is a business, you know, so really everything that's involved, it is. And I think really knowing your data is very important. That I don't know that people put as much focus on it as they should. But knowing your data and being able to know your numbers is very important, because especially if you're writing series, knowing your read through, if you don't know how to calculate your read through, then you don't know if you're being successful or not. You know, if you're not seeing those numbers go up with each book, or at least staying the same. If they're going low, then you need to make a change, you know. So I think that is a big thing, is my data focus, which is not my strength. I told you I have my degree in literature. Math is not my thing.
I hear you. I'm the same.
That's one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is, and this is the best advice I give to anybody looking to start a business, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you do have to wear every hat. And it's one of those things where I would love to outsource a lot of these things. I would love to not have to learn Facebook and Amazon ads and push those off on somebody else and not have to mine my own data. But then you don't know how your business is really doing. So you need to know all of that stuff first. I think that's really important, is to learn all of that first. And then, yes, if you have the means to be able to outsource it, go ahead and do that. I've done that with my other businesses with certain things, but I'm still trying to garner all of that with how it works with my publishing business. So I'm still trucking through that on my own. So I would say that's probably the best advice that I could give business wise. As I mentioned earlier, I've owned 7 or 8 businesses in my life. 3 of those have not been successful. 2 of them were MLMs, or network marketing businesses, which are notoriously very difficult to run, but I learned a lot from them. And then the third one was a franchise that I had purchased, and again, learned a lot from it. But then I did start the other businesses. All my other businesses I've started from the ground up, and those have all been successful. So I think I learned a lot from my failures, just as much as I have from my successes. And the same can definitely be applied to publishing too. If you have a book that doesn't work, or you have a release that wasn't as successful as you thought it should be, figure out why. You're going to learn a lot from that, just as much as you will, or if not more, than if you have one that's successful. If I have a book that's successful and hits that chart when it comes out, I'm going to be so excited, and I'm not going to look at it again as to what I did to do successfully. But if I have a book that falls on its face, I'm going to dissect that until I figure out why it fell on its face. So I think that's important too, is to learn, just like, keep your head up, just because it might not have gone as well as you had planned doesn't mean that it's not something, there isn't an opportunity for you to learn from that. Or to even make it better. Or to even make it better.
That's brilliant advice, actually.
Yeah, really good. Really good.
Because people can get very, very down if things don't go the way they planned. And you're living proof that you can always move on and try something else, or try something in a different way.
We're writers. We have fragile egos.
I was going to say, they're your babies. Your books are your babies. And that's so difficult. And even when I started this, two things. I told myself that if I ever get to a point where writing is no longer something I'm passionate about, I'm done, because it's something that I have loved for so long, and I don't want to ruin that for myself by having it feel like something I have to do, not something that I want to do. So that's a promise I made to myself when I first started. And then the second part of that too is, it's a business. Not to be sensitive, it's a business. Not everybody's going to love everything that you do. Not everything is going to be successful. And then there are other things that are going to be absolutely adored, and they're going to be very successful. So figure it out, and not be so sensitive to, especially like, reviewers can be brutal, especially in this age of hiding, this keyboard warriors, they can do it in anonymity. And so there could be a lot. You have to have thick skin to be in this business, because like you're saying, you can be sensitive, because this is like, it comes from your heart and your soul. I put a piece of my soul in every book I put out there. And you need to have some thick skin and not take that personally, just because it's not received well all of the time.
So
and looking at it as a business.
And like you say, not everyone is going to like everything that you do, but you're looking for those readers who do love what you do. And talking about that, you did a little bit of research before you decided what genre and what you were going to write in. So could you talk about that, how you researched?
Absolutely. Sure. So I actually got into reading romance. I remember reading like Nicholas Sparks back in the day, but I actually got into like really reading like genre romance like it is now in college, because I needed an escape. Because everything I was reading was the classics. It was heavy. It was dense. I needed to get reading glasses to wear on top of my contacts. Like it was that hard stuff. So I needed something to escape, and that's how I got into reading genre romance. And I, since then, have really used that personally as my therapy. And the same goes with writing. In terms of what I was going to write, I was trying to decide, because it would either be between like mystery thrillers or it would be romance. And writing for me is therapeutic, and it's something that I like reading, it's escapism, but for me, writing is therapeutic. And especially so, all of my books have some heavy elements in them. So like I tackle some big issues like fertility and health issues and grief and loss and PTSD. I have PTSD, so it's I put a little bit of all of that in there, because there's something so satisfying about giving somebody this tragedy or this heavy life situation and then giving them their happily ever after. And it's a goal of mine that people who are going through these heavy things and these tough times will be able to read that and see that it's possible to overcome and to get through these battles, even though they're fictional characters. They're very much real life situations. So that was something that I knew I could do with romance. So this is more of like my soul side of why I write romance. It's like, it's just because I mean, who doesn't love love? It makes you happy.
Exactly.
So it's something that I really wanted to do on that perspective personally that I knew I could really invest myself in.
Mm-hmm.
Business side, it's the biggest genre, you know, the readers are voracious. And once you hook them, just because I've been a romance reader for over a decade now, you've got them, you know. And so that's something that I really wanted to be able to get in on and capitalize on, is the volume, yes, but also the dedication of the readers. That's something that I have found as an entrepreneur is crucial, is having your customers are buying you. And I'm reluctant to use that word customers, because I really have a personal connection with my clients, is what I call them in my other businesses, is my clients, not my customers. And I have a personal relationship with my readers, but they're your customers at the end of the day. And cultivating those relationships is absolutely crucial. So I'm totally veering off of where you were asking me.
We're hanging on every word. It's brilliant.
I'm going to keep going on this then. So I think that really, really cultivating those relationships is so important. And especially with romance too, because it's something that is so personal, because you are getting into the nitty gritty of people. It's not a plot driven necessarily genre. It is driven by those characters. And so people, the readers like to get to know the authors too, because you're the ones that are creating these characters who are people. Like all my characters have their own Facebook pages because they're real, you know, like that's the kind of investment that I wanted to put into my career as an author. And even with my Facebook group, my newsletter, and I think this is some big advice I can really put out there for people, is to get personal. Even if you write under a pen name, even if you don't show your face, you can still get personal with your readers. But I will say, keep it on brand. That I think is very important in any business that you're in, is to know your brand and what you represent and what you want put out there. So for example, and I write under a pen name, and a lot of my family and friends have no idea that I'm a writer. My dad literally just found out last week when he came to stay with me and slept under these books here. Yeah. I write firefighter romances. My dad was a firefighter. I was a firefighter. So I was like, oh God, I can't tell my dad I'm writing firefighter romance. But he came in and he saw it. He's like, oh, are they fitness books? I'm like, yes, Dad, they're fitness books. Don't touch them. Don't try to read it. But I'm digressing. But that's so with my brand and talk. So like I said, I'm not, especially because I'm an entrepreneur too, I don't want to keep my author business separate from my professional persona, especially because I want to publish professionally under my real name and all of that too. So I want to keep them very separate, but I can still get personal with my readers. And the ways that I do that are by, like I said, staying on brand. So I write steamy contemporary romance. So I sent out a newsletter about how writing sex changed my life. And I got into the details about how growing up religiously, how sex was always this taboo topic and not something we spoke about, and how I was really nervous as a writer to even write about it when I first got started, you know, because I was afraid of how it'd be perceived or how I'd be perceived. And then again, I write firefighter romances. So I sent out my experience with 9/11. I grew up in New York. My father responded to 9/11. I was a firefighter. You know, I know people who unfortunately passed in that tragedy. So I sent out my personal experience with that. So I'm able to get personal with my readers while still keeping it on brand and relevant to my business. So I think that's also very important in considering as well. And I think that's something where it can get a little bit sticky, because it's easy to open the door wide open and let the readers in for everything. And if you're that kind of person, power to you. But I think it's important to remember that this is a business, and at the end of the day, you're representing a brand, and your products, your books are your products, and you're representing that as a whole. So same thing, like in my Facebook group, I have a very active Facebook group. I feel so blessed to have my readers in there that I do. And same thing, very active in there. So I'm commenting on everything. I post multiple times a day, every single day. Yes, it's a huge time investment, but in doing that, I've been able to cultivate this really tight group of readers who now promote my books without me having to ask. Some of them have even purchased my books and given them away just to help me out, which literally made me cry the first time it happened. and they're the first ones to get out there and write reviews. You know, the first day they devour it, and then I'm like, oh God, that took me months, and now it's gone, and I have to write more books. What is going on? But by cultivating those relationships, I think that's very important to keeping your business strong, is to not shy away from the people who are reading your stuff, because that's what's going to keep you going at the end of the day, especially if you're going to be a writer who's going to continue to write. If you're just planning to put out 1 or 2 books, then you're going to need to constantly, it's called customer acquisition. You're going to have to constantly get more people to read those books. But if, especially in the romance genre, which is how I got on this tangent, they're very voracious. You write a lot. So you want to keep those relationships, because if you have that personal connection with them, they're going to keep reading everything that you put out. So really cultivating that is important. So that was another reason that I chose romance, is because I knew that that would allow me to have a really personal connection with those readers who are diehard fans, as I knew from being a reader and being in other authors groups and seeing this tight-knit group and how into these authors they are. So I knew that was something that I really wanted to do. And then, I mean, the same thing with series, and just the opportunities with writing series and romance was something that I saw as a positive, again, for getting read through and the rapid release strategies. So that's long answer on why you write romance.
Can I ask
These are all going to be long answers.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can I ask about your writing schedule? Because you write in blocks, do you, or you don't write every day?
No. So writing schedule. That's funny.
Sorry. I thought it was simple.
I laugh because I am a cruncher, and that's what I call it. I call it crunch writing. I wrote my thesis in 2 days, and that's including when I was in college, and that's including most of my research. But I found that I do really well when I crank it out. I can write 70,000 words in a week if I have to. I don't prefer to, because I don't sleep. You know, like I'm a zombie by the end of it. But I do like to, my sweet spot, I'd say, to write a book is in 2 weeks. 10 days to 2 weeks is my sweet spot in writing a book. What I love about that is it allows me to get lost just in writing and in that book. So as I went back to saying, when I never finished a book before, it was because I'd put it down and then have to go back and reread. And then when I'm rereading, I'm re-editing. And so by doing that, I don't have to do that. I can continue to just power through it and get it done.
Yeah.
And it keeps it all relevant as I'm doing it. So I don't have to think like, oh, what happened in chapter 2? You know, did he wear this, or did he say that? Did I name the dog? You know, that kind of stuff.
Are you still posting and doing all of this, the other marketing stuff, like the Facebook group and everything, when you're doing those crunch writings?
So I definitely scale it back a little bit, because I absolutely can't keep up that. I do tend to write more at night because there are no distractions. So the dog isn't barking, people aren't calling, I don't get sucked into social media because people are responding, you know, so I tend to write more at night. And I mean, like into the morning hours. So I've always been a night owl. That's just my strength. That time period is when I can really be creative without being distracted. So that does allow me to really take the time during the day to do what I need to do in terms of marketing. What's fantastic is social media scheduling. So taking the time when I'm not writing to schedule my posts is really important. The other thing is making sure that you have your readers engaged so that they're doing the work for you and they're posting for you. So one thing that worked for me, because I wanted to up my engagement in my group, so it wasn't just me posting for the holidays. So for December, I gave away a Kindle and I did a group engagement giveaway. And if you don't know, you can actually find out who your most engaged group members are in your Facebook group. And it gives them like the rankings. I think it gives you your top 10, but it gives their rankings. It's based on how many likes, how many comments, how many posts they do. So I put it out there and said, I'm giving away a Kindle for just being engaged. All you have to do is come in and comment and like and post things that you find that you think the group would like. And that started to train my readers to, oh, we can put this stuff in here. So that has been helpful as well.
Okay, that's awesome. That's a great idea.
Really
oh my God.
Yeah.
So many ideas.
I'm just writing that down. Okay, so what should we go to now?
Marketing, maybe? I just want to ask a little marketing question.
Yeah.
What are your main platforms? Is it Facebook and Amazon ads?
So in terms of ads, I'm still learning ads and how that works because they're complicated.
Yeah.
And again, we're going into like math and data and stuff that is not my strength. So I just signed up for Mark Dawson's Ad for Authors course. So I'm working my way through that. I started my first Facebook ad when I released my third book. So the first two came out in August. The third book came out September 30th. The reason I did that, and I actually have the numbers here so I can tell you exactly what it was, somewhere in here, I'll find it. But the reason that I did that is because if I sold my first book at 99 cents, I'm making 35 cents on one sale. You know, if I run an ad and it's costing me, my ad is 17 cents per click and it's costing me 17 cents and they're only buying that one book, I'm only making pennies literally. So I wanted to wait, which was another positive to rapid releasing. So I wanted to wait until I had 3 books out before I ran that sale, because now instead of getting the pennies off of that, I'm making, at that time I think it was like $5 I was making if they read all 3 books, you know. So I did wait for that till so I started September 30th is when I started running my ads, and I put my first ad up, and like I said, I ran it at, where am I knew you were going to ask this question, so I made sure I had it written down. So I ran the first ad at $3 a day. It's 17 cents per click and that was from October to December. And that's just on my first in series book. I have changed the copy on it a little bit. I've added some things to it, but I've kept the picture and I've kept like the main hook, which is Escape to New York City with the firemen of the Burning for the Bravest series. That's my main hook that's on there, especially during a time when people aren't traveling. All my books are based in New York City, and it tells you right off the bat that you're talking about firefighter romance if you didn't get that from the picture. So I've kept that. I've changed a few things around, but it's kept at that same cost per click, and I've kept seeing the results on the back end for it. So I haven't turned it off, or I did try to turn it off in January and saw a huge dip, so I turned it right back on. So that was the first ad that I ran. And then I did start running Amazon ads in November, I want to say. Yes, I attempted a category ad in November, and I wasn't getting any data at first. I posted in one of the Facebook groups a screenshot, and I was like, somebody help, what am I doing? Because I'm following all of the instructions. I had done one of the courses, and I don't get it. And so somebody had talked me through it, and I fixed that. I had to up some of my bids, and then I went back. They said, leave it a week, or from everything I'd heard, it's like, leave it a week, let it go, try not to obsess over it. I went back to it, and my ACOS was like 860%. And I was like, off, turn this off. Like, why are you, this is not happening. I just spent $50 for 2 people to click on my stuff. No. So I shut that down, and I've been afraid to touch it since then. So that's something I'm going to work on this year once I finish the Ads for Authors course, is running Amazon ads. In November, so October, I didn't release a book. And then in November, I did release my 4th book. And when I did that, I ran a free promo on my first book for 2 days, and I made my second book 99 cents. So when I did that, I did run another Facebook ad for both of those at $20 a day, and I got a cost per click of 7 cents. So that was, so that one was really successful. So I'm doing a free promo next week. So I'm going to do that same thing, literally the same ad. I'm going to put that out there again at the same price. So, so that was also successful. So that's really the only, and then in December, I did release a Christmas book. So I released this Christmas book. I ran an ad on that, that I think I did it at $5 a day for the whole month of December, and it had similar results. I don't remember what my cost per click was on that. So then come January, I shut off my first ad, and I saw a huge dip in numbers. Not huge, but I saw enough of a dip in numbers for me to be like, I'm putting that back on. So I turned that back on, and I upped it. So it was running at $3 a day from October to December. I upped it to, I want to say, I thought I wrote this down. I guess not. I upped it to $4 a day for the rest of January. And then February and March, I'm running it at $5 a day. So I've just been like slowly increasing it. I am planning on I'm going to do, like I said, that free promo next week. So I'm going to have ad spend on that. And then starting next month, I want to get different Facebook ads out there and try and increase that, or at least up my budget on that one ad so I can get some more eyes on it. But that's what I do in terms of specific ads. I do have other do you want me to go into like the newsletters and like the paid newsletters and that stuff? Okay.
Talk about that.
So when I ran my free promo in November, I did a free Booksy that I put out on top of my newsletter swaps. And then I did a big Bookstagram push with all the Bookstagrammers that I've collected, and then also posted in Facebook groups and got that out. And so my first book, it was free for 2 days, and it got 8,000 downloads. And then my second book, I sold over 200 copies of that at 99 cents over those 2 days. So that was what I did there. And then I saw just like snowball from there of the read through. And I've really kept seeing that up until I'd say maybe last month, that I feel like I've seen enough of a dip. I'm like, okay, let's run another one. So that was what I did. And the book book one hit number 16 in the free Kindle store. And it ranked number 1 in like 6 categories. I think it hit number 3 in romance overall. So that was successful for me. This time I'm going to add more. So I've got, I think I'm running it free for 3 days. And then I'm running the Kindle countdown deal on the second book of doing 99 cents for like the 4 days and then drop it, or it goes up to 199 or how that goes. So I've got promos stacked. So instead of just doing that one free Booksy, I'm doing like 4 different promos. So I think that's gonna see a lot more return on that. But that has been probably one of the most successful marketing things that I have done, was doing that free book promotion, because I've seen tons of read through just from that.
Awesome.
I just want to acknowledge that you've done all of this in 7 months, Kaye, and you deserve a huge pat on the back for getting these books out, but also just making that work, because it's that, and plus the whole social media and the nurturing the readers thing. You're a busy lady.
You must be
Thank you.
organized. You must be an uber organized person.
I do have to say, so 2020 is a weird year, right? So one thing I proved to myself by trying to write my first book during my busy season and while opening another business was that I can do it in the tightest crunch that I will ever possibly be in. So if I can do it then, I can do it anytime. So that was actually, while I say it was a horrible mistake to try it then, it was actually a good thing to prove to me that I can do this and make time for it no matter what. 2020 has been a weird year. So my husband left on a contract in March of 2020. I haven't seen him in a year. He's, because of the pandemic, it's kept him away longer than possible. So now I'm by myself. My PTSD kicked in so much harder because now I'm by myself again. So I was dealing with that and having to cope with that. My business is virtually shut down. So I went from working like 16-hour days and having all of these employees to just being me and not having this stuff to do. So, and then on top of other stuff that was going on. So I needed that outlet last year. I absolutely needed a project that I could throw 100% of my energy into, because I mentally, like, I just needed that. That has been, this publishing a book a month isn't something that I'm going to keep going in the long run. It's just a strategy that I needed to utilize at the time to start building myself, but also because I needed it personally as therapy to get through. So I think that played a big part in being able to get that done as quickly as possible. Now, if it was a normal year and I was doing the work that I normally do on my other businesses, I wouldn't have had the amount of time that I have, thankfully, now to be able to dedicate to it. But I always say everything happens for a reason. I literally have that tattooed on my body because I really believe in it. I believe in it. And I feel like that was my sign, was like, this is your chance to really start publishing. And so I've had this extra time where even though I'm still running my business, I ended up selling one. So thankfully that's come off of my plate. But I'm still running my businesses on a much smaller scale than I was. So I'm still getting some income from that, but it's giving me an opportunity to be a full-time writer right out of the gate. And so I think I'm in a unique position because not everybody can do that. And I completely understand. So I think that's been big for me. But so in the first 6 months, I published, actually, I don't even know. So I started August 5th and now we're in March 10th, right? So in this amount of time, I've published 8 books. So it's been a lot, but I've seen the success from it. So that keeps me motivated. to keep going.
Well,
Absolutely.
I
work
think,
harder.
Kay, you deserve far more than a pat on the back, because you're incredibly brave for a start, but you could have gone the other way. You could have like folded into a ball and just like, I just can't do any of it, but you didn't do that.
For sure. Thank you. I did do that for about 3 weeks, and then I was like, I can't
You're
do
allowed.
this. I know, I did. I really I had this moment, and I called up my aunt, and she just knew. She asked me, she's like, what do you need? And I'm like, can you come here? And she knew just because she lives up north. And when I said that, she's like, oh, she's not good. I'll be right there. She was here the next week and stayed with me for a month. So that like really helped me like give me the kick that I needed, and then it got me out of that funk, because it happened, and it let me push back in. And that's something that I think has been really one of the most rewarding things for me as an author. So my other business, it's health and wellness focused. So it's helping people for a business, So that's something that was always really important to me. And I'm like, I'm going to write romance. I'm not going to help people, I'll entertain them, but am I going to help them? So totally ignorant and not smart of me, but I've gotten so much feedback from my readers because I do tackle some heavier topics. I've gotten so much feedback from my readers about how much they've helped my readers, and so getting those emails, like I got an email from one woman who lost a parent to COVID, and she, that losing a parent is one of the things that's in my books. And so she wrote me this long email about how much it helped her, and she's got quotes written down. And then I had actually a firefighter and a police officer, a male, reach out to me, and it honestly made me cry. And I think I need to frame this email and put it somewhere as a reminder of why I do what I do, because he straight up said, thank you for giving voice to what firefighters don't talk about, and that's that PTSD side of things too. And it's things that we ignore and we push aside, but it's so important. And he said, he's like, not to get into too much detail, but he was like, I've gone through all of these things, XYZ in life. And I just read your last book, and it really hit me and took to it hard. Like, it's the first time I've cried, and I don't even know how long. And now I really want to use the lessons that you're teaching there. It's giving me an opportunity to reevaluate my life. And I really want to use what you're teaching to help the other guys in my department so that they don't end up where I am. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Blows your mind.
That's awesome. And I feel like every author has those stories, and that's something that I didn't anticipate going into this, that has been a huge benefit. So that's something that I started this as my therapy, but it's something that has been therapy for others, So I think that's one of the big things as an entrepreneur that I can say is know your why. Know why you do what you do, whatever it is. And whenever you're struggling, whether it's writer's block or doing the things of the business that you don't like, remember that reason. Remember why you do what you do, because that's what's going to keep you motivated at the end. And if you lose sight of that why, that's when you're going to have struggles and when you're going to unfortunately experience some of those failures. So I'd say that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give just in entrepreneurship in general, is to know your why.
Yeah.
That's wise words.
Really good.
So, Kaye, do you see yourself staying with the firefighter romance, or do you think there other branches of romance that you'd like to explore at some point in the future?
That's a great question. Yes and no is going to be the answer to that, because now I'm known for my firefighter romances, because I used to be a firefighter. So one of the big feedbacks I get from everybody is how much they love the authenticity of it. So I think I'm always going to need to have an element of that in my books. Even if it's not every book, I'm going to need to have it. I don't need to write all firefighter series all the time. So just to talk down the pipeline a little bit, my next series is going to be a spin-off from this series, but it's not going to be focusing on firefighters, although you will have some overlap, so you will see some of that coming in. And then the one after that, it's going to probably be more like small town. So one of the books will have a firefighter, so that's the plan, is to keep what has been my bread and butter and has gotten me my audience, is to keep those elements, but then hopefully hook them on everything else because they just like my writing.
Well done.
I'm exhausted. I don't know about the rest of you.
I could keep asking. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions just because.
Yeah, go for it.
So you talked about.
You got me, so.
Yeah, I've got you pinned down. There's no escape. Pretty questions. So you talked about doing Facebook Lives every time you launch. So can you talk a bit about how you use that in your reading?
Thank you for bringing that up, because it is so crucial. And I think that, sorry, my guard dog thinks the Amazon man is his mortal enemy, and he must have just arrived. But so Facebook Lives, I think, is so crucial and important. So what I do is I go live in my group every release, and it's kind of like going to a bookstore for an author reading. So you do a Q&A, I read from my book, we kind of hang out, but it's all on Facebook Live. And that goes back to that cultivating relationships with your readers. And it gives them, one, an opportunity to see your face. So I understand if you write completely anonymously and you don't want to do that, I understand. But it gives them an opportunity to see you as a person, and not just, you're not just this book, you're this person that's behind the screen answering all of these messages from everybody. But it also gives them an opportunity to engage with you. So they get to ask questions, they get to be a part of the process with you. And even just by doing if you're not somebody that's comfortable with fielding questions or shooting from the hip, do a live reading. You don't have to answer questions. You read what you've already written. So it's something that you've done that you're familiar with. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be long. Even if you just go on and read a chapter, that's now something that's going to get them into reading your book, because that's now going to stay on that page forever unless you delete it. And even then, it'll probably still be on there. So that's an opportunity for them to now hear you as the author personally reading the beginning of your book. And then they're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me go out and grab that. So I do that with every single one of my releases. I've also done that in some groups as well. So I've had the opportunity to have some groups, some people that run groups ask me to go live in their groups. Same thing. I do a Q&A. I always do a giveaway. I read from my book. So like next week, I have my free book promotion coming out. And so I've got 2 group takeovers, or not takeovers, but 2 group Facebook Lives scheduled that I'll be doing. And same thing, reading from my book. So they're immediately getting to see the product. So in marketing, you always want to put something in their hand, so use that if you're at a book signing. If we get back to those, use that at a book signing. You always want to give them ownership of something. You want to put something in their hand. We can't do that when you're in the times that we're in. So by being that presence, that's a way of putting it in their hand. They're holding their phone and they're watching you read from your book, so they're getting that ownership with you, that relationship to you. And it only takes a few minutes for them to even feel that connection with the author. So I think that that's a huge opportunity that everybody should be taking advantage of. And you can even record them and put it on your website, so now you have a teaser on your website. So there's a lot of opportunities with that.
You mentioned Instagram as well. Do you do the live and the stories there as well?
Not yet. I have to start doing that. I really didn't start focusing on my Instagram until this past January. I was putting posts in there, but I really didn't start focusing my energy on it until this past January. So that is something that's coming up. I also just started TikTok, which if you're not on TikTok, I mean, it's a time suck, but man, is it worth it. The visibility you get on that platform far surpasses the visibility you get on any of the others as it stands right now. I'm sure that will change, but that's a huge opportunity. So on there, I do like little mock character things. So I pretend to be my character, and it's kind of like a little blurb or an introduction in 60 seconds to my book. And I have seen return on that. So that's also something I would recommend, is to get out there and put yourself in front of your readers.
Do you feel that your readers perhaps skew to the slightly younger age group? By younger, the average romance reader, I think, is something like 45 plus. My sense is maybe for the sexy contemporary firefighter romance might be skew a little younger than that, which is where they're on Insta and TikTok, whereas probably your 45-year-olds plus tend not to be. I'm using the word tend here very carefully because I'm not I am generalizing, but you know what I'm saying. It's skewing a little. In your reader group, would you feel that, well, first, what would your sense be of your readers?
So surprisingly, it's not the younger ones, which is what I thought it would be. Surprisingly, it really does go with what the industry standard is. And even on the other apps as well, I would say it's the same thing. It's the older, I don't want to say, I mean, it's my generation and the next one above me, that that are really the readers that are most engaging. One thing that I will say, and this is just from my marketing background, is that in terms of engagement, you're going to get more engagement from older generations. And I'm saying like the older millennials and higher, simply because the younger generation, their attention spans are so much shorter because of this instant gratification world that they've grown up in from birth, so you're going to get more engagement from the older generations because they're the ones that are going to sit through and watch your whole video. They're the ones that are going to comment. They're the ones that are going to be more engaging versus just like, oh, 2 seconds, you didn't catch my attention. 2 seconds, you didn't catch my attention. So that's just what I've experienced in marketing in general, not just with being an author, is that you are going to get more engagement from the older demographics. But in terms of my readers and what I've cultivated from like my newsletter, my readers definitely fall into that bracket. I'd say probably 35 to 60 is the biggest bulk of my readers.
Cool.
I just shout out for those of us that watch things all the way through on Insta and send hearts.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Oh, that's
awesome.
So funny. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, you said that for your newsletter swaps, you use Book Clicker and Story Origin. Could you just talk quickly about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use, so those are they're websites that you can use, and you can see everybody's newsletter. So it shows their size, their click rate, and their open rates, and also what they write. So you can go through and pick ones that you want to swap with. I highly recommend researching the author before you initiate a swap, making sure that it would fit with your brand. Again, going back to that word, your brand. And doing that, not just clicking, oh, they've got a lot of people in their newsletter. That's not necessarily what you want. And really looking at the open rate too, more so than the size of the newsletter, because sure, they might have 20,000 people, but 1% opens it versus somebody who has 1,000 people that has 40% opening it, so that's important too, is looking that up. And then they can request from you too. So those have been really useful. Like I said, I can do 30 something swaps in a month. So that's how I've garnered most of those swaps, is through Book Clicker and Story Origin.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in terms of, I mean, you're blowing my mind, by the way, with the stuff you're doing. And
hopefully it's a good way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, you're awesome. But you're very much about that reader engagement, which I love. So is there anything else that you can think of that you're doing for reader engagement that we haven't already talked about?
Good question. I think really just those are the big things. If you're on Instagram and you're following people back, make sure you're engaging on their content too. And it's not just a one-way street, so really taking the time to engage in all of that, I think, is very important. So that it's not just like, buy my stuff and I only care about you because you're buying my stuff, so I think that's a big thing, is to be engaging. If you're going to go that way and follow them, to really own up to it, you don't have to follow them, but if you do, definitely utilize that, and take care of them, do giveaways for your readers every once in a while, just because you want to show them that you appreciate them. And I think that's another thing too. Every time you're making contact with your reader, it shouldn't just be about buy my books, really take the time to get to know them. So make sure you're posting things in there, like, even if it's something silly, like today. So I write steamy romance, right? So Wednesday is hump day. So I posted a very nice picture, we're just going to put it that way, and ask my readers, what's the first thing you notice on a man, so that they're writing things back. So I think with putting, whenever you post something, try to make it engaging. Don't just put up, hey, my book, here it is, blah blah blah. Put up something that's going to make them want to answer back. And then even if you don't have the time to really personally reply to everything, gifts are your best friend, instead of just writing thank you to everybody, go through and find a thank you gift and just respond with something funny, so just so that it feels more personal than just like commenting back and forth. But I think that's been really critical for me, is having that reader engagement, because when when you need them, they're going to be there for you. And that's something that I've noticed so I had a book, a pre-order that Amazon glitched and canceled on me back in January. And yeah, I literally, after I unfurled myself from under my desk after 12 hours of crying, I got on Facebook Live on my reader group, and I was like, hey, this just happened. And every single one of them was like, we got you, girl. We're going to promote. Don't you worry. It's going to be even more successful, you know, and they did. And they went out there and they did that just because I've taken that time to cultivate the relationship with them. And then I actually just had to push back one of my releases. It's the first time I've ever done that because my dad got tired of the snow in New York and decided he wanted to surprise visit me at the worst possible time. So I was like, do I spend quality time with my dad or do I get my book ready? So I ended up pushing it back. And I just told that to my readers just like that, you know, it's like, because they knew I was excited about my dad visiting because I told them my dad was visiting. My dad used to be a firefighter and I used to be a firefighter. There you go. I'm on brand. So I'm not just telling them something, I'm talking about my brand. So they were totally open and they're like, absolutely, spend time with your dad. We can wait. Don't worry, you know? So I get those responses because I've cultivated those relationships. So it really is important to take that time and to invest that.
Can I just ask how many people you have in that group?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say it's like 450 members at this point. So it's not a huge group, but I think it's been 8 months, you know, I'm very happy with those numbers.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
It's quality over quantity too. You know, it's definitely like they're engaged, and I know so many of them, you know, that haven't met them, but I know so many of them because we're constantly interacting with each other. So like they want to do reader weekends. So they're like, when are we going to do our reader weekend? And I live in Florida. I'm like, okay, well, if we can travel again, I'll set one up and you guys can all come to Florida and we'll do a reader weekend, you know? So having those relationships, because those are in marketing, it's called the Pied Piper. You know, you're supposed to look for that person that's going to not just be your consumer, but tell everybody they know that they're your consumer and they should be your consumers too. And that's what you're trying to do with your author business, is so that you're not the only one that has to do customer acquisition. You know, I want so many of my readers have invited their people into their group, you know, because they're like, you've got to be here. This is your crowd. These are your people, you know, and having that kind of tribe mentality. But the only way you do that is by taking the time and investing. Yes, it is time consuming. I spend hours sometimes doing that when I have other things that I need to do, but it is absolutely critical.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
Remind me a lot of Lucy Score. She has a very similar approach with that really close connection.
That is a huge compliment.
No,
yes, she does.
She's lovely as well, and you both would get on like a house on fire. So when the world opens up again, Kaye, I think it'll be wonderful to get back to conferences again, and writers' conferences, and connecting that way. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm so excited. I've got 3 books, so I can't wait to finally be able to do that. But and that goes to, like you mentioned, Lucy Score. She's one of those authors that I really like. It's called Chasing the Rabbit. You know, it's about, in marketing, that's the term, is chasing the rabbit, and it's about finding somebody who's in the position that you want to be in and figuring out how they got there, and figure, like, that's what you want to do. So figure, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that's really kind of how I lived my life, because you want to constantly be evolving and getting better. And the only way to do that is to find people who are doing what you want to do. So she's one of those authors that I really look up to and emulate, because she's the same way. Like you said, Shar, she is somebody who is very reader focused, and it's obviously been successful for her.
It is, but I would say the commonality. So I think, yes, you can replicate that to a certain degree, but what you can't replicate is your genuineness. Both of you have a real genuineness. Like, you are genuinely invested in those readers. You're genuinely invested in your books. And I think a lot of indie authors starting out, they want the selling tropes, right? So firefighter romance is a selling thing, but you've got this deeply personal connection to that, and that can't be faked. Like, you can copy it to a certain point, but you can't copy that genuineness. And I think that's what people recognize, whether they know it or not. I think that's like getting woo-woo, but on a soul connection, people connect to that. You know, So kudos to
thank
you.
I appreciate that. That's very sweet. And I completely agree with you. And when I say chase the rabbit, I don't mean to copy what other people are doing. You have to make it your own at the end of the day, because readers will see right through that.
Yeah.
You know, they will see right through it if you were faking. So you've got to make it your own. But there are definite strategies out there that you can cultivate from people who are in positions that you want to be in.
Absolutely. And I think they might be successful for maybe 1, maybe 2 books, because they can you know, they can get the covers, all the rest of it. But that deep the readership, those people, regardless of, you know, how often you're publishing, those readers will still be there for you, and that's the key. So
Very
you're
true.
Amazon exclusive, Kaye, from the
I
start?
am. Yes, I am. And I'm a Kindle Unlimited reader, so I know how much. And so even like in preparation for publishing, I can't even, probably 1,000 books in the romance genre, like genre romance, just to familiarize myself with what's out there, what's popular, what's working, what people want, and what people expect from something that you're going to label as XYZ. And so Kindle Unlimited was obviously huge for that, because I don't have an unlimited budget for books. I wish I did. But so that was something that I've enjoyed as a reader. And because I know how voracious romance readers are, and because I didn't have a name for myself yet, I was more risk-free for me to be in Kindle Unlimited. Is that something that I'm going to keep up long term? I'm undecided at this point. 60% of my income does come from Kindle Unlimited, so that is really hard to walk away from. But I do think once I have more books out and more series out, I might pull some for a little bit and try to do a rotation and look at getting into libraries and that kind of thing. But at this point, my plan is to keep at least my first 2 series in Kindle Unlimited for the time being, and then evaluate at that point.
That's wise.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're kind of rocking up to the end of the interview
We
now.
are.
I think we've been pretty long.
But it's been so fascinating.
It's been
awesome
amazing.
speaking to you, Kaye. Thank you so much. I
appreciate it.
That's all right. Now, where's the best place for people to find you if they want to come in?
So my website is kaykennedy.com. All of my links are on there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram as Written by Kaye, and it's KYE. So that's where you find me on there. My reader group is Romance Reads That Kiss and Tell with Kaye Kennedy on Facebook. But you can, if you get on one of those, there's links to all of them. So
awesome. And Shah, where can we be found?
So we can be found at Spargirls Podcast.
Oh, she's frozen. Okay.
.com. .com.
And also on Facebook and everywhere else on the social medias. But thank you so much for being with us again, Kaye. It's been fantastic.
Thank you. It's been an honor. And thank you to you ladies for everything that you do. Because I do have to say, when I was researching, I've listened to every single episode that you've put out at least twice. So thank you. Thank you for what you've done, because what you're doing is really helping the indie community. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our listeners. We're very, very grateful to all of you for listening to us for yet another episode of the Spargirls podcast. See you all.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.